if we want to do attraction marketing, right, rather than disruption marketing, if we want to work with people who really deeply resonate with us, how do we do that at scale? How do we do that authentically? How do we create our own way of doing things? We're entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Like, we're not trying to be like everyone else.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So for me, and it sounds like maybe for you, this is how we get to be who we really are. And the trappings, the mics, the software, all of the things are the means, are the platform that we get to express who we really are.
Win all in, play my cards right. Up the ante, one blackjack all night. Roll the dice, let it ride. Water the odds, I got snake eyes.
This podcast exists because of the team at CASCM. At CASCM, we make content creation enjoyable. We are on a mission to help leaders create content that will improve lives, content to be proud of, content that fosters community. We know through firsthand experience how content brings people together, and we love helping make that happen. We produce podcasts, short form videos, blog posts, and other written works, while also providing support in website development, social media management, and strategic planning. And we would be excited to help you. Visit cascm.com to learn more, or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. So I just heard your episode you did with Dominique Drew.
Oh.
And I was listening last night. So I got introduced to her. And I think it was Julian who had introduced us. And so I talked to her maybe like a year ago. And to hear you two on the mics, just like, you ever hear like a rapper or a singer who just has flow and you all just get it out and you're just part of the conversation. I just want to let you know, like, I was totally into it. It's like this vibe, it's this chemistry or whatever that is. And you don't get it. You know, there's so many podcasts now and you're just like, oh my God, this is so boring and this is dry. And you get it and it's fine. And there's no judgment. But like, then you get something that's like a gem and you're like, oh, this is good stuff. And to hear you two just vibing off one another and just flowing is the word I could come up with best. I was like, yeah, this is really awesome. So
thank you. Oh my gosh. So that was the episode where I was on her podcast.
correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And are you a member of Bellwether too? Because I know the two of them are.
Yeah, I'm not, but I just enjoy talking to her. I enjoyed when we talked. I enjoyed talking to you. And then it's so weird because I'm late, right? So this show is going to be a little bit shorter than normal because I had another show and it was with an unscripted executive producer, and he's done all these shows and all this stuff, and it became so unscripted that it just went on and on and on, and it was in a good way, and it was so positive. And anyway, sometimes you just sit down and talk with someone and like not have this overall, like you want a strategy and you talk about having a strategy, and sometimes your strategy is like, I just want to have an amazing conversation with this person. That's what it's all about. And then also to what this individual did is they weren't pushing anything. They were there for me as the host, which is what you talk about is when you show up as a guest on someone else's podcast. Are you there for you or are you there for the show host? And that's what that felt like. And at the end, we started getting into some aspects of a project that they're working on right now. And I mean, I don't know. It just felt right. And just want to keep having that conversation with that person. So anyway, that's what you do. You found this niche to say, I want to help people show up on other people's podcasts for the right reasons. How'd you come across that? And why is that so important now in an era where there's millions of podcasts?
I would say it's for the same reason that when I looked at your episode titles, I was immediately like, oh, I got chills. I went, okay, this is another level, to your point, to what I normally see. I mean, recent episodes as of the time of this recording around ego awareness, around going alcohol free, around intuition, around trust. You had your dad on, you're talking about intimacy. I'm like, okay, right? I immediately know this is my type of person. And that's what's showing up in an authentic way for a real, raw, intimate conversation. Preparing for that strategically allows you to show up authentically. And I think that a lot of times we believe it is one or the other. Like it's all head or it's all heart, right?
Yeah.
We have these people in our life where they're like, they're all strategy. They're very driven. They're very this. And then we have these people that are like on the other side that are maybe like really woo or really spiritual or really flowy, right? And we all know that in order to have a full human experience, it requires little pieces of all of these different parts of us and ways of living. And so I think that what I realized by doing something that I really fell in love with doing was that people told me I was showing up differently.
Yeah.
And then I began to study why. And then I began to go, is this teachable? Is this transferable for the right kind of human? Because we've all seen terrible speakers on the stage before, and like we're uncomfortable because we feel bad for them and we wonder if they're feeling bad for themselves, and just awkward, right? And maybe we're thinking about leaving the room. Well, that's much easier to do on podcasts. Just click to the next episode you have. But
Right.
as you know, it is an unparalleled, intimate platform. And how do we learn to like embody that for good so that we can create things that serve more people and also serve ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So kind of looking at the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, some of the best podcasts I've heard was just a conversation of two people. And maybe there was like clues or points to what the guests did and what product they're selling or what business they're in. And maybe it comes at the end, like, oh, you have a book. Like, where can I buy your book? Where can people buy your book? Because what I learned is I'm just fascinated by you as an individual. And for the person that's truly I don't know what the word is, a buyer, someone who's in your market or whatever, they're going to go find out where your stuff is. That's just what they're going to do. And I get it. You want to make it frictionless. You want to make it easy. But it's like, oh, wow, I got to hear Christine talk about all these different things. And like, that's how I think about things. Like, whatever she's a part of and whatever she's doing, I can get on with that. And yeah, I'm going to be a guest on some podcasts coming up. So all of a sudden, it's like, I need to reach out to Christine then, right? So that's how I think people will think about it, as opposed to, well, no, the only reason I bought from you is because you threw an ad at the beginning of this, and then you did this, and then you showed, and it's like, no. That's disruption marketing. And that gets in the way of your authentic self and all that. And I'll say, like, the fact that you look at the titles and that tells you something, that's huge, right? That's incredible feedback to like, wow, like you think about it, but then you don't think about it. For the person to show up and to say, I want to have like an authentic conversation. I just want to have a conversation with this person. Where does that go to? Because I can go listen, because a lot of people you talk to, they have been on other podcasts. And if I want the backstory of that person and how they got to here, the rags to riches or whatever, I can go get that. And I'm happy to link to those shows so other people can go find it. But when you come on another show, can it be, no, this one's different? And it's hard, right? It's hard to get that across to guests and to the PR people that are coming out there. But anyway, you're thinking about something, you're going somewhere with it. I can see it. So like when I say all that, like what's coming to mind for you right now?
Yeah. I'm thinking about the world that a lot of us come from, which is like, we have a speaker page or we have our keynote topics, right?
Yeah.
And podcasting is so new.
Yep.
Compared to like public speaking and oration, I mean, we're talking about a couple of decades versus a couple of millennia. And so I think what happens is people are trying to figure out the replicable, scalable way to go on a podcast tour, to sell their books, to promote their brand, right? Their personal brand. You and I both have personal brands. Your last name is the name of your company, right? Like there's no surprises here, right?
Yeah.
And I think what I have learned is that most people just treat it like a promotion, like solely a way of getting OPA, other people's audiences. And the way that I think about it is as this deep and also very leveraged form of a word that I used to hate until I found podcasting, which is networking.
Yep.
I really have been to maybe 2 in-person networking events in the 8 years that I've lived in the town that I live in. And there are a lot of reasons for that. I have young kids, I don't live downtown where all this stuff happens, blah, 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 blah. And like, if it was a priority, if it was something I enjoyed, I would figure out a way to do it. The truth is that and I think there are a lot of us who are just not here for the surface level, let's trade business cards.
Right.
Like, that is not, if you look at the people that I've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars with, or that I've helped the most, or vice versa, like, that's not how I met them.
Yeah.
I met them through relationships, right? And so if we want to do attraction marketing, right, rather than disruption marketing, if we want to work with people who really deeply resonate with us, how do we do that at scale? How do we do that authentically? How do we create our own way of doing things? We're entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Like, we're not trying to be like everyone else.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So for me, and it sounds like maybe for you, this is how we get to be who we really are. And the trappings, the mics, all the software, all of the things are the means, are the platform that we get to express who we really are.
Yeah. And once you go down that path, because at the beginning, it's very difficult. And I think it's like one of the number one reasons why people won't say start a podcast or appear on podcasts. It's like, what am I going to say? Who's going to care? What stories do I have to tell? I'm going to sound horrible. People are going to laugh at me. And quite honestly, yeah, maybe all of that's probably true to some degree, but it's also not. Like, it's also, there is someone out there. It might, like, I just had finished telling the story of Army Black Hawk pilot who wrote a book, and his mom read it. She was in her 90s. And she said, I didn't know all these stories. I didn't know you went through all of this. And to him, it was like, it didn't matter if only one person read that book. And the only not regret, but the only thing he wished is that his dad, who passed away when he was like 21, got to read it. But at least his mom got to read it. And that's it. Like, there's so many other reasons to be creating content, to be on a podcast. And it's not always about this, how many bicycles did I sell? There are transactions or projects inside of that, no doubt. But that storytelling that exists in that is so huge. And then that other word you used, which I agree with you, is leverage. It's like, well, what does leverage mean? And is leverage not a good thing? It's like, no, leverage is an incredible thing. Like, I've sat down with people. It's like just today, you and I are not having this conversation if I don't have a podcast, right? Because we were introduced by someone who's in the audio engineering space. So it was only because we were both in the podcasting world. And then there's other people you'll talk to, like, they reached out to us to be on our podcast. And we get to talk to this individual. And it's not it could be to sell something and all that, but I get to spend an hour, 10 minutes, 2 hours with this person. What incredible leverage that is in a genuine way, right? Because leverage could be like, I'm going to take advantage of you. I'm going to use your audience for my benefit and my gain. That's a different story. We're not talking about that, because that all happens too, right? All of those good things that you need to happen will take care of itself, right? I believe, if we do enough of the good stuff. So maybe that's altruistic, but that's how I feel about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Like, it can be all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to wrap this thing up. It's going to be quick, and we're going to get back on here. We're going to do more of these things. But when you're looking to talk to someone who's going to be a guest on podcasts, are you doing it with people who have been around the block and have been guests on podcasts already? Or is it all the above, where it's also going to be someone say, hey, I'm just starting to get into this game. I know I need to appear on podcasts. What does that look like for you? Who are you trying to reach, and who are you trying to work with?
I think the most important thing is an alignment of values, as cheesy and like overused as that part of my mind says that is. I mean, the truth is that it doesn't work if there's not.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times people want to be a guest on podcasts before they have a clear message or something that they know they want to share.
Yeah.
And hey, if you want to go and have conversations, awesome, right? There's a place for that. I also love to work with people who are like, they're called like millionaire makers by their clients, right? They've been behind the scenes of these businesses, helping other people, creating their content, their funnels, their businesses, whatever. And now they're ready to do it for themselves. So it's like they know their stuff, but now they're practicing beginnership when it comes to this new approach to putting yourself out there. And I think so much of entrepreneurship is being willing to do that and learning something new. And like you all talked about, being aware of the ego along the way. Because if you're not coachable, if you can't learn, if you think you know it all, like you're not my person.
Yeah.
And there are probably other people that you can sit in a room with and you all can talk about how great you are to each other
Love
and
that.
you can have fun with that.
Yeah.
And I think that where it gets really fun is where you get to help create real change and help people, again, be their authentic selves, right? This is the platform to do it. At the end of the day, it's sharing your voice authentically in the world in a way that's aligned for you,
Yeah.
right? So I think that's always been my heart is like, as one of my mentors says, like empowering those who empower others. And because of my background and experience, this is the way that I can help.
Yeah.
So that's why I love it.
I love that. It's funny because we start working with a client or potential client or prospect, or whatever you want to call them. I wasn't as good as at this early on, but you start having these conversations and you start leaning to like, what's it going to be like to work with them? And then you start sending things their way to see if they take that bait or go in a certain direction, and they might opt out, which is kind of the idea of for this, like open the door for them, like escort, like this future employee that's in their office. Like, I don't think you can work here because of this. And then if they've come back, then they are in, right? Then they're like, no, I understand what you're saying. Because so often it's like, no, I have it all figured out. And it's like, then why are you here? So what do you need me for? Right? And that's okay. And there's no judgment on that. It's just, but we have to move on, right? Because time's limited and we have to go on to the next thing. And so how you said that, and I don't think it's cheesy, it's not cringy. It's like, that's real. It's like understanding and recognizing like, well, we could have a lot of fun working together and it could be beneficial and monetary and all that good stuff. Because if you go down the path with the wrong person, it's like, what are you setting yourself up for at that point? So
Exactly.
yeah.
So well said.
Well, this is great, Christine. This is part 1. There's going to be part 2. There's going to be part 3, maybe part 10. We're going to go down that path. So this is really cool. I'm so sorry I was running late. I do appreciate your patience and all of that, but we will stay in touch and thank you.
Yeah, to be continued. I can't wait, Eric.
In case you haven't noticed, we love podcasts. In fact, we love building podcasts, everything from development to production. Because of all that, we're building a one-of-a-kind podcast network. If you have a podcast or looking to launch a new podcast, then we should talk. You can message me on Twitter at Eric_Kaz or hit us up any way that works for you. Let's talk about your podcast joining this one-of-a-kind podcast network.